All right. We're going to discuss common mistakes that people make when they first start training. And I think we can all say that we've all been beginners. And first of all, don't forget that we all start somewhere. So if you feel guilty of any of those mistakes, we've all been there. We're going to tell you our stories, and just keep going. Make sure that you keep moving on, because we all learn from our mistakes. And it's totally normal to look like a little bit of a noob when you first start training, and then you just get better. But what we've also learned, one of the big things is that it's cool to have video evidence so that you can see how far you've come. Because not all of us have, but we will share a couple of insights as we get along with this podcast episode. So, Christine, what was one of the biggest things that you've learned in your lifting journey, or what was one of the biggest mistakes?
I guess maybe first ever was that I should have gotten a coach, or put some prioritize the learning component of lifting. Early days it was just, I'll just see what this person does, and I'll just see what this person does. And I think also I did a lot of my early weight training phase with my partner, so I was very much following the bro split and just doing whatever they said. But yeah, I think over time I learned that I should have really just gotten a coach, with someone who could give me very specific guidelines and programming around what I wanted to achieve. So I think that's the first lesson I wish I learned from day one. And then the second one was later on in my lifting journey, when I started to do more of the Olympic lifting, or started to get some curiosity around that area, where I did learn from my first lesson and I did find a coach. But the mistake that I made then was that I didn't do my research. I just found someone that looked like they did their Olympic lifting and could give me some guidance, but I didn't actually look into what his qualifications were. I didn't ask enough questions. I just said, please teach me. And they said yes. And then that ended up in a really serious shoulder injury that got me out of action for 6 months. And I couldn't even move my neck for a solid 4 of it. So those were 2 really hard lessons that I wish I didn't have to learn. But that would be my 2 pieces of advice for anyone out there.
That's crazy.
What about you guys?
Have you recovered from those injuries now?
I have now, and I've seen a few more, because I'm still developing in weightlifting. I want to get to a stage where I can really see the potential of what I can move before maybe finding something else. So I've had a few coaches in the space, and I've learned something from each and every single one. But now, from that first injury, I definitely have a psychological hurdle that I always have to overcome when I'm doing my snatches, because I got my injury doing a drill that was supposed to improve my snatches. And now it's it's this mental barrier. My clean and jerk is at a good weight that I'm satisfied that I can continue developing and exploring. But when it comes to my snatches, I have to do this don't tell yourself that you're scared, or don't let that thing happen. And I'm no, I won't let it happen. And then I've had some knockbacks because of that internal conversation that I have, trying to not let it psych me out, and then it has psyched me out. So yeah, I guess I've recovered physically, but psychologically the trauma is there for sure.
Nika, do you want to share your stories or your mistakes that you made when you first started training?
Yeah, sure. I guess in terms, it's not a full-on beginning, middle, end story, but I guess patience is a huge thing. I think through training or learning something new in general, you kind of realize how much patience you do or do not have. And that usually sometimes determines whether you stick with it or not. Because I've definitely started things and been I'm not doing super well fast enough. And then sometimes we give up on it. Or I think it's just being patient and recognizing, especially like with like weight training when you are new, knowing that it's okay to ask for help. You should ask for help. Like, we've all been beginners. I used to go to the gym at 2 a.m. because I didn't know what I was doing and I felt self-conscious about it. And then I just self-taught, and I didn't actually reach out to a coach to get help for probably years. And if I had done that sooner, I probably could have expedited a lot of like my trial and error. But just even on that note, like the patience component, like change, sometimes you'll see like a before, and then you'll see like this after or current, and it's like, whoa, this drastic change. And it's like, that wasn't just one thing that created that change. It's this like aggregation of marginal gains. And I know it's cheesy, but like one of my favorite, like, I guess, visual examples of this is like when you're in like a cold room and you have an ice cube, and it's ice, and you're at like 25 degrees Fahrenheit. You switch to 26, nothing, 27, nothing, 28. But then once you get to 32 degrees, it's the same thing from 31 to 32, same amount difference, but then that's when you start to get melting. And it's the same thing with anything. Like, we're here to build habits. I know last time we talked about 75 hard, and that whole challenge is about building the habits for sustainable change. So it's compounding those habits and stacking habit on habit. It's not just one. It's not just drinking a glass of water and then waking up the strongest you've ever been. It's compounding those habits little by little over time to the ultimate change, or to the ultimate adaptation that you want.
I can totally relate to that. I think I was very guilty of not reaching out to a coach in the beginning as well. And I just trained, and I would go to the gym when it was unstaffed in the middle of the day when they had their lunch break. And it took me forever to realize what my actual goal was within the gym as well. And that was probably something where I wasted most of my training time, because I just fluffed around. I didn't have a real program to stick to. I did have a program, but I didn't know about progressive overload. I didn't know that you're meant to add weight to the bar, not do the same thing over and over again, or that you shouldn't change your workout, because I was following some app from some influencer. And I would change my workout like every week, and I would never see any progress. I'm like, that doesn't feel right. And then eventually, when I decided, hey, it's time for me to take this serious, and went into powerlifting, that's when things started to click. But I think I wasted a whole lot of time in the beginning of my gym journey, not eating enough and just fluffing around with training and doing something else every single day, because I didn't really have a goal. Because in my mind, I was like, oh, I'm never going to gain muscle. Like, I'm just that person that will not gain muscle. And then, yeah, I just fluffed around for way too long. And now I wish I had started eating properly and didn't worry about getting like muscles, because now my squat would probably be a lot stronger than it is now.
Yeah, I feel like I'm in the same boat. Like, I didn't say it before, because I feel like the ones that I mentioned were like the ones that have had the biggest impact on me, like for the long term. But like, yeah, I went to the gym and had no idea what I was doing. Like, I didn't know that, if I'd just gotten a coach sooner, I would have found out that there's this thing called mobility, and that a flex in the gym isn't like how heavy you can go. The flex is that you can move really well. And I think like, even like when you like done your weight training for so long, and then you realize you have to do the coaching, like, get the learning component, commitment to that, like the ego challenge that it has when you have to strip the bar down and start like light to work on your form and your depth and your technique. Like, I think I was like, at the height of my early squat life that looked like a banana and didn't even hit death. I think I was like ballsy enough to even get it to like 75 kilos. And then when I realized that's not a flex, I started maybe just at like even 40 kilos for just learning how to stabilize and move well for maybe like 2 years before I even considered going back up to anywhere near 70. And then I think like it was crazy, like how exponential like like this, my strength went from that point on. And I just wish I'd just done that 5 years beforehand. You know how we were mentioning that we wish we'd gotten guidance, we'd asked like questions or asked someone to help us out. I also have been on the other end of that. Like I guess out here in Australia, part of like, you know, your training in PT, they say like, you know, your duty of care is to the people that are exercising around you, not just your clients. Go forth and help people and give advice and whatnot. And they painted this like romantic picture of like you being able to frolic around the gym floor and tell people like how you're going to help them and whatnot. And the first person that I'm an introvert, so asking me to do that alone outside of like my comfort zone takes a lot of energy emotionally for me. And the first person that I ever went to go do this like wonderful thing for the general public, like completely bit my head off. He was this older guy. He would have been maybe 60, 70. And he was just doing a seated row, and the seated row looked really trappy and bicepy and swingy. And I was like, I'm going to help this guy out. I said, hey, how are you? Like, how's your training? Did you need help with that? And he just turned around and he was like, I've probably been training for longer than you've been alive. And I was like, okay, confrontation. Thank you. I'm never going to do this ever again. I'm never approaching another single soul. I'm completely traumatized. Oh my God. Have you guys like had a similar experience before?
I wouldn't say it's like similar, but just like on that same note, I know exactly what you like first starting out, like that's sort of like, I don't know, you're kind of green, like, especially I remember the very first client I was ever given. I thought it was going to be something, I don't want to say straightforward, but like a common goal. Like this guy was much older and he had just come back from like his like third knee surgery. And I just was overwhelmed. I was like, oh my gosh, like I didn't know. I was like, oh my gosh, my very first client has like this issue and this issue and this issue and this issue. And I was like, this is like, couldn't I like start with like something more simple, like walking? Like, do you know what I mean? Like something like very basic, but that sort of like, I went and learned everything I could. I like called, my background was like pre-med. So like I had done like internships and things in like physical therapy offices and blah, 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 in a different life. So it's like, I started calling like every doctor and I was like, these are the blah, blah, blah. Like, how do I treat this? Like, how should I handle this situation? It's like, it forced me to like learn everything I could about this specific injury, this specific rehabilitation. And like, I don't know, if anything, like it was scared out of my mind because I was like, oh my gosh, is this person never going to walk again because of me? Like I was frightened, but then I don't know, you forge through and you do the best you can, you do your due diligence. And then sorry, that kind of just went off on a tangent, but tying it back, like, yes, they asked me to, walk the floor and help people out. And there's a level where like, I understand what they're doing with that. But at the same time, like context matters, like, because I can see why someone might get upset when you try to fix their form. It's like, if I don't know what you're training for, how can I tell you something is wrong or right? Like even with like a row, like for instance, if your goal is like isolation, or maybe it's like just hypertrophy or whatever, maybe you're going to go for anti-rotation. But if you're training for a sport, of course there's going to be rotation. Like you're not lifting or swinging in like this singular plane. So in a lot of ways, I'm like, who am I to tell you that you're doing this wrong? But then on the other side of that, if someone were to ever come up and be like, hey, I have a question, or like, I love that. That was my favorite thing. And I tried to do that often enough and just seem so happy when people would ask me that more people would ask. And that was probably my favorite part of like being on the gym floor, is like getting to talk to people about something that maybe they were unsure of and I actually happened to know. And I was like, hell yeah, like that was the best feeling ever. And on that note as well, every single Vitruvian member has access to us, has access to coaches, has access to calls. So no excuses.
Yeah, so important that you ask for help as well and that you don't feel embarrassed. I love it when people on calls are like, oh, like there's going to probably be a dumb question. I'm like, no, actually, all those questions help, because when you think it's a dumb question, it's clearly something that we have missed in explaining. So please ask all the questions. Like there's no dumb questions. We're happy to help, and that just helps us improve your life and your lift. So ask all the questions. I had a similar experience when I was working in a gym where I felt like especially guys didn't like to be told what to do, but they were quite happy to tell me what I did wrong. But yeah, I recently had an experience in a gym where there was two girls squatting across of me, and I thought, oh, their squat isn't right. I wish I could help them. And then they were not feeling it. And then I put a squat pad on, and there was a coach next to me, and it was not a gym that I work at. It's just a gym where I train at. And I was like, oh, I want to go up to the girls and help them. But there were two of them. And I was like, maybe they don't want it. They're going to feel nervous if I go up and help them. And then the coach next to me, who did have a client, actually went to the girls and helped them. And I was like, oh, I love to see that, because I wasn't working in the gym. So I thought maybe these girls are going to be like, why the heck is she thinks she can help us? But when the other coach went up to them and helped them, I was like, oh, this makes me so happy. This is the best thing ever. So I think it's a fine line of offending someone and offering help, but then it's also good to ask for help. The other girl asked me how to put an ankle strap on the other day, and I'm like, oh, of course I can show you how to put an ankle strap on. And that was really cute as well.
Yeah. It's so like context is like so funny as well. Like even when sometimes when I get I actually did a demo yesterday, and like someone said like, is this even right for me? And I was like, I know, like, you know, I could probably tell you that this is for everyone. I was like, but I wouldn't be doing like right by you if I didn't ask you a bit about yourself, what you like doing, what your goals are. I was like, so if you don't mind, like I wouldn't mind just asking like what you like doing. And then the whole time when he was telling me like, I like doing like boxing and yoga and weights, and he's like, I'm sorry, like I like doing so many things that's probably like not useful for you. And I was like, no, like the perfect program doesn't exist. The perfect program is the thing that gets you through the door. So if that means like heaps of different things, then so be it. But like if you're also asking someone like, am I doing this right? Like, is it right for me to like do like this movement? It's like, well, I don't even know what like you're training for. So it's definitely like you need to be able to have that time to like have a chat with someone about everything that, you know, like excites them when they go to the gym, what they want to be training for, where they want to be in a year's time, 6 months time. And I think that's what that's why, like, you know, the numerous calls that people can book with us is just so valuable. But I think when it comes to the gym floor, it's like a completely different story. I don't train in the place that I work in because I just feel like it's hard to get anything done when people know you work there or you're friends with people in the place. But I think the thing that I struggle with is the place that I train in, there's a lot of younger kids like that are, you know, maybe in high school and are doing it after school, and I'm looking at them and, you know, I feel like a lot of people that are probably listening to this have like probably been there at one stage in their life as well. But I look at them and I think, do I start a chat maybe, and then maybe in a month's time we'll get pretty friendly. I can tell them what to do. Or you'll see an older person like only do partial squats, and you're like, I hope you're training for like football or something, and you're trying to increase your vertical jump or whatnot, before I sit there and think, oh, like that looks a little bit not great. Or yeah, I'm always sitting there like, I hope to God they know what they're doing, and they're doing it like that because it's specific for what they need to do. I feel like the line's always like blurred as well. I've gone off on a tangent, didn't I?
No,
it's definitely
and
Nika.
It's definitely valid, but I think again, not only does context matter, like in terms of like what someone's training for, but also like where that person's at. And like, again, it all comes back to like the goal. And because like I'm going through an injury, and what I consider for my squat, I'm lucky to get quarter depth right now, like without pain. So for me, like that's a win. So again, a lot of it is like learning and then relearning and then reworking and seeing what feels good in your body based on your specific morphology, because everyone has different femur lengths. It's not going to look the same for everyone. Everyone's deadlift isn't necessarily like, there's general things like you want to brace and breathe in a certain, like those are like universal things, but everyone's squat's going to look different. And like I would never want someone to be self-conscious or not squat because they think that they're doing it wrong. Because that fear that like, am I doing this? Like, I don't want that to stop us from doing anything really, like everyone can be, oh my gosh, the things that I could do that could be better, probably everything. Like there's probably nothing I do that's like, what, like, and that's not me being self-deprecating. That's just knowing like I have a lot to learn. I'll always have something to learn. And I don't know, no one should feel bad if you have a certain depth of squat and like that's your jam. Like I don't want you to feel bad about it, because if that's helping you get towards your goal, like who am I to tell you otherwise? So yeah, definitely a big proponent of like doing what works best for you for what you're trying to do, because the path, we could collectively be like, oh, we all have similar goals, and that path to that goal for each and every one of us is going to look completely different. So you have a lot of different roads to a single destination, a lot like Los Angeles. A lot of
and the traffic is still terrible.
The 405 and the 101 suck. So you got to find those back.
I think that's so true. So like, for example, my squat is totally different to Christine's squat because my legs are 10 times longer than Christine's, and Christine has a beautiful deep squat. And I still get feedback from my coach all the time. I think it's really important for us to still ask for feedback all the time. Although we're in the industry and we know our stuff, there's always more to learn. I couldn't agree more with you, Nika, there. There's always stuff that you can learn. And I think that's why it's so important that if you have access to coaches, which every one of you guys does, reach out to them and ask for help and send a video through if you're unsure about anything, or just if you want to get confirmation that you are doing it right. Like there's nothing wrong with that either.
So on that note, shall we get to some videos? I know Christine and B have some fun videos to share.
Yeah, who wants to start?
Okay, so this I'm like really, I'm pretty sure this is in my Instagram already anyway, but I'm like super anxious about sharing it to begin with. So this is when I first this was with my first coach, and this is what I mean by like do your research and find yourself a coach that has the follow through to get you to where you want to be. I had been with this particular coach for maybe a year and a half, so a solid amount of time that you should at least look a little bit cleaner. So here we go. Oh gosh. Like first off, let's just talk about these shoes, because I'm pretty sure they're like one size too big for me. So there's like no extension there. I'm like hopping forward, and I'm just like completely unbalanced in my feet. The fact that I'm wearing shoes that are like too big for me is probably also not good. Oh dear, I'll stop there. But that's that one that I found. And then another one that I wanted to show everyone was like how terrible my mobility was. So I used to think that like I was pretty bendy, but like my shoulder mobility and my thoracic mobility was terrible. I thought, like I was saying this earlier on, but I thought my head was like this high off the ground. And then a friend of mine like showed me a picture of like what it looked like, and you can't see it here, but my head is like really close to the ground, and I was just like my arms are bent, like I had to like bring my hands into the middle because it was just like absolutely shocking. but it's definitely not like that anymore. But that's what I could find in the archives, because when I actually started improving my technique, I felt really embarrassed and deleted all the footage that I had that looked really, really bad. And I wish I had it for this particular chat, because I know those aren't like terrible, but I know that there's worse ones out there. So if anyone finds them in a deep dive into the internet, please send them to me, because I deleted them from my Instagram when I was really embarrassed.
I think that's so cool though. Just like even the journey, like even having that like one video there. And then if you were to try that same movement today, like I know it sounds cheesy and like in classes, it's like just 1% better, just 1 rep more. Like I'm not just saying that to like fill the space. Like it really is that 1%. It's the, like I said at the very beginning, it's like the aggregation of those like marginal gains. It's that one little bit that compounds and you do it again and again and again. And then eventually, you know, all the dominoes flip over. But it's not just doing it one time. I imagine you did more than one bridge to get to where you are today. There probably been a lot more bridges,
100%, yeah.
And a lot of things that went into the improvements that you now see today. So it's, again, the patience and also just acknowledging that it's all the little steps matter. And each one of those is a win.
Yeah. And I think that's also like another lesson. It's like, even when you are getting better and you do end up improving a lot more, don't delete the old photos and videos, because you will look back and like be itching to see how bad they really were for purposes like this.
Yeah, I think it's so important to have some like reference points to give yourself a little pat on the shoulder and be like, I've been there, I've done that, and now I'm here. It's so cool. All right, I'll share my videos. Okay, so this is one of my first ever squats. I'm just gonna turn this down. And I know for a fact I had no idea what shoes you need to wear. So I have like runners on. And this is me like trying to squat with 10 steps out, 500 more steps. And then it's like big cushiony running shoes. There's no depth and no bracing. And the chest just goes up like this. And this is like when I already had a coach. So I don't actually have any videos of where I didn't have a coach, because I only started filming when my coach asked me to send videos to them. So I don't know what feedback they would have given to this, but there's like chickening out on that last rep there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So then this is with a coach that I actually then saw and like, okay, cool. I have some better shoes on now. Oops. But the depth is still shocking. And this is my good morning squat. So I basically have no flexion in the knee and I'm just leaning forward and I'm good morning squatting my squat up. And that was the coach in the background filming.
Is this before is this before the first one, or the first one was the first one and this is the next one?
I think this one's before and the other one was after. So the technique just went like this.
So it's not a bad low bar, like it's just it's super horizontal.
It's just horizontal. I don't know where I'm going, and I'm looking down, and then I'm so slow. But I wish I had my banana deadlift, but I couldn't find it because the deadlift was worse, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, that was some of that. I also have a bench press somewhere that I haven't shared yet because I couldn't find it. That is like unracking it way too low. And then, I don't know, it was just shocking. And I'm glad that I had a coach at that stage that I actually had to take videos for, because the times or the year before that where I didn't have a coach, I'm pretty sure the videos would have been even worse, but that would have been way too self-conscious to even take the camera out in the gym.
Should have, could have, would have, should have done it from the beginning.
No, I need to ask the first gym that I joined for the camera footage from like 5 years ago.
CCTV.
Yeah.
Oh, I wish we had some of yours next.
I know.
So I'm the absolute worst when it comes to filming anything. So I'll raise my hand on that. That's something that I'm working on. 75 Hard is helping me with that. I have to take a photo every day or like a video every day. So there will be evidence of that, but not of my lifting, unfortunately.
What would have been really cool is like if we all had filmed our first reaction of using the machine.
Yeah. My first exercise was a bench press that I tried because John made me. What was your guys' first exercise that you tried on it?
It was a long time ago. It was on V form for sure. I'll have to have a think. Christine, if you know, you go ahead. I'm still thinking what the first exercise I ever did was.
Well, mine was a long bar deadlift, and I remember how you got me to try it because you were like, "Oh, what's your PB?" And I told you, and you're like, "Oh yeah, okay." And I was like, "But don't load me up that heavy." And you're like, "I'll just do this." And I was like, "Do I get to know the number?" And you're like, "No, like this will be fine." And then I pulled it, and I was like, "What the hell?" And you're like, "That was only 30 kilos." I was like, "What the hell?" Yeah, that's what I remember. And I was like, geez, this is crazy. It's not even anywhere near what I do. That's nuts. Sorry, 30 kilos each side, isn't it? 60.
Yeah.
I still don't know for sure. I just know it wasn't something with the long bar. It had to have been a handle thing. So I'm thinking it's probably bicep curls or rows, like a lawnmower row. One of those two.
What did you first think?
It was different. It was during the pandemic when I first tried it. So it'd been like a hot minute since I'd done anything significant. And I think trying to lift what I thought the weight was just made me feel really bad. I was like, oh my gosh, like, you know, you tell people like, oh, it's okay to take like a couple weeks off, nothing's gonna happen. And I thought like my strength was just like shot. Because I was that person that when the pandemic hit, I like impulse bought like a barbell, bumper plates, everything that's like rusting in my poor mom's backyard now. And then I got this and like I'm like lifting and I was like, oh my gosh, like lifting is over for me. I'm horrible. Like it felt so hard and so heavy that it didn't make me feel good, to be honest. It made me sad. But then, you know, you realize like that was the irrational mind and then you keep at it. So yeah, so holy crap, it's hard. That was probably the first reaction. Holy crap, it's hard. And then the black hole of thoughts about yourself like being weak that came after that.
Yeah, I remember that my chest was sore for days after. Like I was so sore and I wanted to play it cool in front of like John and I was like, yeah, easy. And then I was sore for days.
Because I like when I first jumped on it, it was to sit in an interview with UV. And I just remember the rest of the interview, because you got me to jump on it first. The rest of the interview, I was just still kind of in this like, whoa, this thing is so crazy. Like my mind was just like, I was like thinking of the potential of like strength gains and all sorts. And I think I ended up asking you a million questions, like rather than you actually interviewing me, because I was like, what does this, like, what about this? What about that? It turned into like a demo call, really. Yeah, I just remember being like completely like, I want one, I need this toy.
Yeah, that's what we're here for. Answering all the questions. That's our job now. That's why I knew you were a perfect coach. I think if we want to summarize some of the points from the common mistakes, I think one is definitely something that you shouldn't be doing is not having a goal. So make sure that you have a goal that suits you and the technique and everything around it will then align. Another one will be don't overdo it as well from the beginning. Make sure that you're sticking to your goal, focus on recovery, don't overdo the weight, let the machine guide you or let your coach guide you on it. And then definitely use proper form and work on your technique before ego lifting comes up. And lastly, is probably also going to be important is making sure that your nutrition is on point. So if you are wanting to gain muscle, you actually have to eat. If you're wanting to lose body fat, you probably have to cut back on your food a little bit. just aligning with your goals there as well. Is there anything you guys want to add to that?
I was just gonna mention that, like, if any of those things, anyone has questions about, again, you have full access to coaches. So if you need to talk about technique, if you have some nutrition questions, literally anything related to any of that, please don't hesitate to reach out. There's no silly questions, and we all collectively want to see all of us win. So any questions, reach out.
100%. Thank you so much for listening. If you've got questions, support email, Facebook group, or comment under the YouTube video, and we're more than happy to answer them all.